Good morning, everyone. Hope you are having a good day. So, a little thought to start our week. First of all, Chodesh Tov. Today is Rosh Chodesh. It's a time of today is Rosh Chodesh when we celebrate the new month, the month of Mar Cheshvan. We have no holidays this month, but we take this trend from the last month and bring it and instill it into this month. So last week's Torah portion, we read about the first murder. We read it in Shul on Shabbos, and this is what I spoke in Shul on Shabbos outdoors when we were sitting in the cold. So we read about the first murder in the Torah. And Adam and Eve are devastated. There's only 4 people in the entire world, and here goes their son and kills another son. So there's a murder. Not only is there a murder, but the murder is done by their own child. And then Adam and Eve are sitting, and the Torah doesn't tell us how Adam and Eve buried the first death in the world. It doesn't speak about the death. Yet, as always, the Midrash fills in the details. What happened? How did they bury Abel? So the Midrash tells us a fascinating story. The Midrash tells us that Adam and Eve were sitting and they were mourning the death of their son by their other son. And they didn't know what to do. How should they bury this child of theirs? And suddenly, they saw a raven flying. And in the raven's beak was a dead raven. And they saw the raven come onto the ground and dig into the earth and make a hole big enough to put in the dead raven and then cover it with earth. And Adam said, aha, if this is how the raven is burying the other raven, this is how we're going to bury Abel. And that's what they did. But the question, of course, is twofold. First of all, God already told Adam, Me'afar bata, me'afar tashuv. You come from the earth and you will go back to the earth. Secondly, why the raven, out of all people, had to be the one, out of all animals, had to be the one to teach Adam this message? And there's a beautiful thought from the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1942, which he spoke to the Chevra Kadisha, to the burial society. And this message is something really powerful that impacted the way the Rebbe was leader for so many years and what he taught us. And I think it's so relevant today with all the anger, with all the hate, with all the animosity. You can't get a word and you can't have a conversation. There's so much arguing and fighting. It's like never before. And the Rebbe said like this: the raven, out of all animals, the raven is considered the unkindest animal that there is. Because of its black plumage, its carrion diet, and the way its croaking call, the raven is considered to be the least nicest of all animals. In fact, it has a reputation. If you say scientists did this study a few years ago, and had this reputation that you should never get into the raven's way, because the raven never forgets and is very vengeful and will always remember what you did to it. In fact, if you talk about the dog being the kindest of animals, Kul Olev, as Kabbalah tells us, all heart, the raven is on the other side of it. And in fact, in chapter 147 of Psalms, where we speak about God being kind and feeding all creations, we say what? Livnei Orev Asher Yikra'u. God feeds the sons of the raven, the children of the raven, that call to him. Why does it say the children of the raven? Says the Ibn Ezra in his commentary, because the ravens, they don't even feed their own children. And therefore they call out to God to feed them, and that's what God does, he feeds them. And as Edgar Allan Poe in his famous poem says, that the raven is grim, ungainly, it's ghastly, it's gaunt, it's an ominous bird of yore. So here you have this bird that was the unkindest of all. And the Rebbe says like this. The Rebbe says, Adam and Eve, you think they didn't know how to bury Abel? Of course they knew how to bury Abel. Put him to the earth. God said from the earth you come, to the earth you go. What Adam and Eve didn't know what to do was how to continue with life after watching the first murder. Not only the first murder, but the murder by their child. And they said they knew God told them death is part of life. We're going to have to die, but murder? Such hate that you could come to kill someone? And Adam and Eve says, how do we go on with life? How do we continue after such a tragedy. And that's when the raven came into being. The raven, the most unkind of all animals, came into the scene right then and showed them that even the raven that's so unkind is able to sometimes do a kindness without any thought of reward. What do you mean? Because the raven was burying another raven that was dead. What was the raven going to gain from it? Nothing. But at the end of the day, this kindness that God instilled into everything and everyone in this world. And Adam and Eve realized at that moment the message that God was sending them from the raven, that the way to combat hate and murder and violence that's irrational is through irrational love. Sure, the first sense of the way we would respond to murder is to shut down, is to hide, is to say, how could I live on with this? But that's not the real response God wants us to have. God wants us to have a response that's unconditional in love, that's irrational in love. When you see hate, you combat it with even more kindness. When you see anger, you combat it even with more calmness and kindness to the person that's showing it to you. Because at the end of the day, that's the only way we could respond to such irrational hate. You know, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, may have a speedy recovery. In one of his beautiful talks, he said once that the Rebbe, a blessed memory, Hitler, Yimach Shemai, sought out every Jew in hate. And what the Rebbe did when he became leader was he sought out every Jew with love. Irrational love, unconditional love. The only answer to such irrational hate of the Nazis, of Hitler, was to show so much more love and to seek out every single Jew with unconditional love no matter what. And that's what the Rebbe did all the years of his leadership. His love was unconditional and was to all. And that's really what happened when Adam and Eve sat there and they watched the first murder of Abel and they couldn't go on. God sent them the message of the raven, that even in the unkindness of a raven, you can find kindness that's unconditional. And the way to respond to Abel's death by Cain, his brother, is with unconditional love, no matter what. Show someone love. You know, I was thinking about it. We have the whole Supreme Court hearings now for the new judge, Amy Coney Barret. And the ear is so toxic. And it's been like this for a while. It used to be back in the days of yore, not so long ago, when a judge was confirmed to the Supreme Court, he would get 70, 80, 90 votes. Most people, if he was a good or she was a good jurist, if she was a good legal person who was honest, who was ethical, they voted for you. Today, there's so much animosity, so much hate. How do we respond to this? But I saw something very fascinating. I can't tell you if Amy Coney Barret should become a judge, not be nominated, should be approved. That's not where I go as a rabbi. But what I could tell you is what we can learn from her family. Amy Coney Barret has 7 kids. She doesn't have 10 kids, but she has 7 kids. She has a child with special needs, with Down syndrome. But then she has 2 children that she adopted from Haiti. After the devastation in Haiti, these children had no fighting chance at a normal life, at some sense of normalcy. And here was a woman who had 5 kids already, who had a busy life. She was a lawyer, she was a jurist, yet she went and she adopted these 2 kids and brought them to America. So they should be able to have some sense of normalcy, some sense of a good life that they and each and every one of us deserve. So that we can learn from her. We can learn from her the unconditional kindness of faith, of love, of nurture, even in the times of irrational hate. And that's our message to some of us who are listening. Most of you might have made up your mind who you're going to vote for, who you're not going to vote for. But some of us are so troubled by the toxic ear, by the way each one has zero respect and zero love for someone else who might vote against them. How do we respond to that? And that's what we learned from Adam and Eve. In this portion, when we see the first tragedy, we learn unconditional kindness and love, care to every single one of us. Chodesh Tov, may it be a good new month. May we flood this world with love, unconditional love, and caring and embracing of one another, regardless of how and what they think. God bless you. Have a great day.